Greetings and welcome to When the Moment Chooses You. I'd like to invite you to this episode where we share a clip with Shola Richards, and it was an extremely powerful session. But this particular clip really shows you what called Shola into his moment of dealing with incivility in the workplace. So I hope you enjoyed this episode.
I feel things really deeply. And so because of that, I spend a lot of time reflecting on things that maybe some other people don't spend as much time on. Things like, why are people so mean to each other? Like, why would someone hesitate to put a mask on in an airplane if that could benefit someone else? And why would you scream and curse at the flight attendant for they're just trying to do their job, just trying to keep us safe? Like, these are thoughts that I spend a whole lot of time. They keep me up at night. And they're also the things that wake me up in the morning. So fast forward, or rewind, I should say, back to like 15 plus years ago, I was in a really toxic work environment. And a lot of those questions came up. It's like, why are people like this? Why are people think it's okay to abuse their employees and demean them and treat them horribly? And I didn't get any answers to my questions. So I ended up falling to a very deep depression based on how I was being treated at work. And to make a long story very, very short, I attempted to take my own life as a result of just the complete despondency and pain and lack of answers and lack of hope. Let's go with that. And then the moment happened for me, where the moment chose me. Because I don't know if I chose the moment, because I just didn't have enough self-belief to believe I could choose it.
Right.
The moment came when it was like, one of my buddies, I was lamenting to one of my friends shortly after, not like a week or two after, I should say, my suicide attempt. And just so people aren't wildly imagining what I did to myself, basically what I tried to do was I live in Los Angeles, and while driving down the 405 freeway, I attempted to drive my car off the overpass in an attempt to make it look like an accident. And thankfully, the guardrail held. They came back into incoming traffic, and that's why I'm still here with you today. But one of my buddies was like, I was like, oh man, this is like, why are people so awful to each other in the workplace? How come no one is doing anything about this? How come no one's doing anything about this? And my friend was like, look, well, you're somebody. Why don't you do something about it? I was like, oh, okay, now we're talking crazy. Like, why would I do something about it? Who am I? Like, I don't have any education in this. Like, it's not my thing. Like, what are you talking about? I should do something about this. I'm just happy to complain about it. Someone else needs to do something about it. And that moment, I went back and I reflected on my friend's words, and I was like, maybe I will do something. Maybe this moment chose me for a reason. I'm just going to take a baby step toward it and see what happens. I'm going to write a blog post about how I think the workplace should be. That's not a huge step, but for me it was. And I now at the time I worked full time at a high profile healthcare organization, UCLA Health, and I was in a leadership position, and I was afraid of saying anything that would reflect poorly, not just on me, but the organization. So
Right. There
were things that I was writing about that were actually happening at work. So I was like, I don't know if I want to wade into those waters. So, but I leaned into the faith that the moment chose me for a reason. So I wrote my piece, and I wasn't writing about UCLA Health. I was just writing about workplace in general. Like, why do we think it's okay to accept bullying, harassment, racism, discrimination, sexism, homophobia? Go on and on. These things should not be happening in the workplace or anywhere, quite frankly.
Right.
So I wrote, and when I found, and I'm sure you found the same thing, Charlene, when you decided that you're going to move forward with this podcast in 2020, when this idea really came to you, is that the universe rewards courage. I really believe that. It's like, man, I was just waiting for you to take that one step. And when the moment does choose you, it's important to acknowledge it, because, and I believe this wholeheartedly as well, if you choose to ignore the calling, then, I feel like fate and destiny, they're impatient. They're not willing to wait forever for you. So it's like, you know what? He's not a real one. On to the next. I'll take this to someone who's willing to put this into action.
Right.
And I've seen that happen with many people where the moment was calling them, choosing them specifically, and they listen to their own self-doubt, their own fears, their own lack of belief in themselves instead of the calling of that greatness that's calling to them.
Wow.
And unfortunately, everyone who's ignored it has regretted it. There's never one person, oh, I'm so glad I didn't follow that call. Like, no, it's like, why didn't I? Why didn't I? Maybe I could have done something with it. And then they'll have to spend the rest of their lifetime wrestling with what ifs. And that's a really sad place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, what a powerful story. I have another question on the heels of that. Was that only in that organization, or had you had experience upcoming, you know what I mean, in the past that were similar to what you were experiencing?
Yeah, and I should be clear because I definitely don't want to get it twisted with when I said it earlier. My suicide attempt and the issues, that had nothing to do with UCLA Health. That was just where I was when I decided that I was going to be turning my pain into writing. That was a previous job where that situation happened. But I can go back as far as one of my very first jobs at Burger King, where I had a guy come into the restaurant. He wanted a Whopper with, what was that? I should remember this by now, because he wanted extra pickles and no mayonnaise. I remember that. And so back in the day, there's like a button for pickles and whatever. And I did it opposite. I did extra mayonnaise and no pickles and I gave him his Whopper, and he was incensed. You would have thought that like I set his house on fire, or I like gambled away his 401k on the NBA finals or something. And he just was like, he came in red faced. He grabbed the Whopper and he slammed it right into my chest. Like, what are you doing, you idiot? They started cursing me out.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't know, 16, 17. I was a kid, grown man. And I remember my boss was like, oh my gosh, like that was awful. I can't believe you did that to me. Like, and my boss was like, well, the customer's always right. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you should think about what you did that made him so angry. And that was the first time I realized, like, that doesn't seem right. Like
exactly.
That doesn't seem right for someone to curse at me and call me all sorts of names and assault me with a hamburger because I made a mistake. Like, that seems strange. And for my boss not to support me, hey man, sorry he got your order wrong. We'll fix it. However, there's no place for this type of behavior. And if you do want your Whopper the way that you're asking for it, you need to check yourself. Get yourself in the right frame of mind, apologize to him, and then we'll consider doing it. If not, you can go find yourself a different Burger King to eat at. Like, it seems like those things, when that happened to me, and then subsequently many more examples throughout my work career, it's like, this seems like it just didn't seem right. It's like, there's something not okay with this. Like, there's something about accepting abuse, accepting deep levels of personal insults or whatever it could be in the workplace. It seems like these things don't seem like they have a place here. And I want to do something to correct that. And seemingly, at least from my vantage point, no one was like, hey, like I would get a whole lot of, well, that's why they call it work and not play, because it's hard. It's like, well, that's great. I'm not saying work doesn't have to be hard, but like, abusive, that seems a little much, right? So like, those are the things that kept me going and kept me fighting, because it wasn't just things that I would see when I started writing my blog. I was drawing on literal decades of personal experience in the workplace, either from a first person perspective or from a colleague or a friend who's dealt with something similar or worse than I did.
Wow. Hey, so when you did your blog post, what happened?
Real talk, not a whole lot.
That's what I wanted to know.
But here's what, actually, you know what? That's such a great question. So I'm gonna answer it in two different ways. So, okay. So when I did write it, my initial response was, what happened? Not a whole lot. And what I meant by not a whole lot is like, it wasn't like I started sharing my thoughts and then like all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, I have it's getting shared hundreds of thousands of times on social media. Like that none of that happened.
Right.
But what did happen, which I should not minimize, is that I moved out of the state of inertia and started actually moving forward. And that changed me. So I was like, wow, the power of momentum, I was able to harness it. So I wrote something, and the universe didn't like stand up and applaud me for my take on the workplace. But what it did is it made me feel like, okay, I shared my thoughts. My children are still alive. There's no like, didn't lose my job. I didn't get called into the CEO's office. I just shared my point. And it's wild what fear will do to us. It will make you think like, you can't share this. You can't do this because this will happen. All these bizarre boogeymen that don't even exist, lurking around every single corner, trying to destroy your life and your career. So by writing that, what it did is it gave me a place of like, I feel good about this. This is great. And so I'm going to do it again. And then I'm going to do it again. And each time it built up a little, it was like a deposit into this previously barren, empty savings account where I'm starting to build up like some reserves. Like, wow, I did this once and I can do it again. And as you do something that's hard and scary, the more you do it, the easier it becomes the next time you do it. So to answer your question, initially the world did not jump up and respond, but it did change me to a place where I felt like, okay, I belong here. I can write this stuff. And, for the few people who are reading it, I'm going to give them value and hopefully enough to be able to get them to change their ideas about how we should be treating each other in the workplace.
What a great episode. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And if you did, you know what I want you to do? I want you to comment. I want you to like it. I want you to share it. I want you to spread the news about this because we can no longer tolerate incivility in the workplace. And to hear Shola's story of what caused him to move from where he was unto where he is now, where he's impacting millions of people, that is really what these moments are all about. And so if you enjoyed this particular segment, I would love to hear your comments. Talk to me in the comments. And I would love for you to give me a 5-star review because I truly believe this was a 5-star conversation. So thank you so much for joining, and I will talk to you on the next episode.